Sure, no.
A lot of things.
I get you. Anyway,
no, that makes sense.
I'm coming on here, so, it's one of those things a sports talk show host you try to develop, and get people talking about. So here we are.
Yeah.
All right, my next guest is, in my opinion, probably the best sports columnist in Tennessee. However, I question his sanity, and that's why I had to have him on to sort of give him a check, because Joe Rexrode of the Tennessean wrote last week, I believe it was, that if he had his druthers, if he could have a ticket, he'd much rather this year go to the Tennessee-Vanderbilt football game than the Iron Bowl. First and second place selected teams in the SEC West versus sixth and seventh place teams selected in the SEC East. What's the motivation here? You don't like to get caught up in traffic jams or something? Tell me a little bit about why you'd rather go see the game with Vandy in Tennessee than the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, Marky, maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into it because I know I'm going to have it. But no, my argument is that it's a more compelling game this year. Now, I've got this, I think, realistic but also sort of fantasy scenario of 5-6 Tennessee, 5-6 Vanderbilt, bowl game on the line in Nashville, and actually a really big game for both coaches and programs. I mean, even though it's Jeremy Pruitt's first year,
No, I can see what you're talking about.
It's big for him to get that 6-win, get to a bowl game this year. And of course, it's big for Derek Mason. For one thing, on the one hand, to have a chance to win 3 straight against Tennessee would be huge, and that's sort of, even last year's win over Tennessee really overshadowed a lot of what was a really disappointing season for him, the way that they plummeted from 3-0. If he loses and has another bowl this season, now you're talking about 4 out of 5 without a bowl game. Well, that's not good enough even at Vanderbilt. So that's my little dream scenario. But the other half of this equation is that I understand that Auburn's a good team and it's the Iron Bowl and people are going to be excited about that game, and I think it'll be an important game. But Nick Saban never loses to Auburn two years in a row. Mm-hmm. I doubt he ever will, and he's got them at home this year after losing last year, and I think the average margin of victory in the years after a loss to Auburn is like in the mid-20s. I'm sorry, Alabama's going to blow the doors off Auburn this year. I'll tell you that right now. So.
All right, there's the prediction.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what. The more I think about it, the more I am liking Mississippi State as the number 2 team, and I. Picking Auburn for second place ahead of Mississippi State. It's the reputation of the program more so than maybe, I really like their offensive line or so. We are talking to Joe Rexrode of the Tennessean, and he's been covering the Tennessee Titans a lot this year. I guess one of the things, and I love this story, I don't necessarily like it when teams pay a lot of money for offensive linemen. I understand the importance of having good offensive line, but ultimately it's one position out of 5. My goodness, it wasn't Orlando Pace that put the old greatest show on turf over the top. It was Kurt Warner. I mean, if I'm going to pay somebody, I want to pay a receiver, I want to pay a quarterback, I want to pay an impact player on defense. That being said, dressing up as Boss Hogg, Taylor Lewan became a man after my own heart. You're talking Joe Rexrode to a guy that's helped put on Dukes of Hazzard conventions. Say what you will. But no, I want to ask you, what did you think? What was that entire event about? What was the motivation to dress up like Boss Hogg for Taylor Lewan? What did he say about that?
Well, he's just a really weird dude.
Okay.
Which is a wonderfully weird dude. I mean, I don't know what we'd do without him. That was a big signing for the Titans to me because I hear you on the skill guys, but boy, if your quarterback gets crushed, then you don't have him anymore. And Taylor Lewan is one of the best left tackles in the league, and I think it ended up being about right where it should have been. 5 years, $80 million, $50 guaranteed. I mean, that's a lot of money. offensive lineman ever now. But,
Yeah.
he'll get passed on that as well. You know how it goes. I mean, he's just setting a new benchmark, and he'll get passed. And so big for the Titans. Good signing. Huge for the media because he does stuff like that. He just came out of his press conference. He has his Boss Hog suit on, and I've never done a convention, but I will tell you, Marky, on Friday nights,
Oh, yes.
there was no missing the Dukes of Hazzard in my household. So then someone brought out a little speaker. They're playing the theme song, which I still have not been able to get out of my head. It's been almost a week. And he came out with a big cigar. I mean, it's just seriously, I don't know what I'd do without the guy. Pretty hilarious and pretty good for a guy who's 27 years old to even know what the heck the Dukes of Hazzard is, other than the movie reboot garbage that I didn't even watch. But hey, man, Taylor Lewan is one of a kind, no doubt about it. And although at times he'll have a bad penalty, he'll say something just completely off the wall. I think he's a really important guy in that locker room too, just from a energy standpoint. I think people really rally around him, and he gets that team fired up a lot. So it was quite a day at Titans headquarters, I'll tell you that.
If you're an old Dukes fan, and I mean, you're from Michigan, so car culture there, is also quite big. But then I think in your future columns, you can't say that Lewan signed for $80 million. He signed for 80 million simoleons. If you're a Dukes fan, you'll get the reference with Boss Hog, if you remember that. But anyhow,
wow.
Yes.
That's impressive. I'd forgotten that one, but yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I hear what you're putting down.
Anyway, yes, not only that, but yes, check out, by the way, on YouTube, my interview with Guy Waldron, who created the Dukes of Hazzard, and the relationship that the show had with NASCAR. I truly believe that that helped NASCAR take off, certainly in the 80s, and, gave it a bit of a boost. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and Cale Yarborough guest starring, and all that good stuff. So it's on YouTube, folks. Do Guy Waldron, Marky, Billson, you'll be able to find it right there. We're talking, though, to Joe Rexrode, who is the man of the hour. I did want to ask, though, with Lewan, I was thinking when he did that, so many times football stars, they're made stars because of their personality, for better or worse. I mean, Terrell Owens and doing the event in Chattanooga, there's an example of somebody really, you remember the personality there. You don't remember his stats and all this. But I was thinking, offensive linemen, we don't necessarily think of offensive linemen in football as having great personalities and such, of being that showcase guy, the guy that the cameras always go to. Can I ask you a question? Can you think of any other linemen that either you've covered or even in a historical sense that really came off kind of like Lewan does?
That's a good question, Marky, and I will tell you, you're right. Certainly we don't focus on them. They don't get a ton of attention. But I have found in my years that they're often some of the best people to talk to in a locker room. And actually, covered Michigan State for a long time. There was a guy named, I'm sure you've never heard of him, but his name was Gordy Nabilski. Mm-hmm. He played for Michigan State, around the 2003, 4, 5, right in there. And it's funny because he ended up becoming a guy who I would quote after every game or every chance I got, because he would say these outrageous things. And one time I actually wrote about that, why are you, and he basically was like, hey man, we never get any love, so I'm going to take advantage of every chance I get. So you do get those colorful characters, but I think you get a lot of candid discussion from linemen. I've always kind of thought that, not across the board, but that's one of the places I often look. Now, you don't, a Nabilski or a Lewan, those are extreme cases. But of course, our natural tendency is to write about the skill guys, the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs, even defensively, usually more, well, I guess it depends defensively. It can be at any position there, but offensive linemen, they deserve more love, Marky.
No, I understand that, and I think that, one of the reasons, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to the quarterback with the microphone and all this, but I know what you're saying. When you can break down, I actually liked going to kickers. No one else was around, and they would always have a unique perspective because, who else was talking to them? And, it was amazing. Now, you generally didn't get the nitty-gritty stuff, but Funny stories? Absolutely, you'd get them from the kicker and the punter and all this. That was something I looked for. And you know, a lot of times, sometimes you will be able to. Kickers from a foreign country. I mean, former Titans kicker Gary Anderson. I know he kicked for the Titans at the end of his career, but he has incredible stories about his family moving from South Africa to the United States because his family was so opposed to apartheid. I mean, you know, think about that. Now, that's a column right there, Joe Rexrode. I mean, that's tremendous. And I can remember, again, I'm going to show you some of my roots back in Pittsburgh, but Myron Cope interviewing him back in the day on his radio show. And so what about, did you ever receive pressure from your teammates? Hey, you're a South African, you know, a land of apartheid, and feel, you know, a friction and all that. Great questions, great answers given, you know, out of the mouths of babes sometimes. But yeah, I think it is a little bit more. You got a tendency, hey, tell us how you made the great catch rather than tell us how you made the great block. I do understand that. I'm long-winded, but I'm talking to Joe Rexrode, who also wrote a column, really, I think, somewhat courageous and all that, looking at Austin Watson, who pled no contest to a domestic violence assault charge. It was a misdemeanor domestic violence assault charge, but do you think that he's going to get suspended?
Yeah, well, no, I do. I mean, I think the league will give him some kind of suspension. I wouldn't be surprised if it's double-digit games. The column I wrote was, you know, my opinion is that the Titans should not wait on the league and that the Titans should move on from him. And that's not because I have any, you know, intimate knowledge of what took place here. I've had a lot of response from fans saying, well, it was only this, it was only that. Really, no one has absolute clarity on what happened. The only thing we know is that an independent witness called the police when they saw this interaction. He was charged with domestic assault, and, you know, the case was not dismissed, and he ended up pleading no contest. And, you know, he can have this expunged. By all accounts, everything we do know, does not rise to the level of some of these more serious domestic violence cases, not even close. But the predators that made domestic violence their absolute centerpiece community issue in the last couple of years, to their credit. You know, and one reason I give them credit for it is because you always have to know that something like this is possible. And so this is one of those put your money where your mouth is kind of things. But to me, if that is what you're going to do, and they've put a lot of money into it, they put more than $500,000 into a YWCA organization here. They've filmed PSAs, Austin Watson included. But if that's going to be your centerpiece issue, then to me, you have to be absolute zero tolerance on anything like this. But I don't believe they're going to. I think Austin Watson will be back with the team. And I do hope that, and I do, like I said, I expect the league to suspend him. My guess would be like 10 games, something like that. But I really hope that rather than hide behind this and not talk and, you know, sort of just say, hey, I want my life to go on. I hope Austin Watson decides to be a leader in this way and is very open about what happened and is as out there and out front as anyone in that organization on issues of domestic violence. I mean, I think that's the only, you know, respectable way for this to go if he's going to stay on this team.
I kind of like what you're saying there. I kind of like what you're saying, yeah. And also, I mean, if you want to be the, you know, hey, second chances, it's a misdemeanor, all this, you're not firing the guy. You know, you're suspended, but you're taking the initiative. I like what you're saying there, Joe Rexrode of the Tennessean. I do want to ask you, the Gordy Nowitzki story, I want to go back to that a little bit and talking about covering Michigan State football. Question I got to ask you, did you cover Michigan State when Nick Saban was the coach there?
I sure did. I coached, I covered Saban's last 3 years, so I was there for, you know, as he was still struggling to be a coach, as he was, frankly, way more of a jerk publicly than he is now. I mean, he's really actually smoothed himself out a lot at Alabama, and he can still be very gruff about things. And you know, watched him kind of finally put it together in year 5. He had a contract issue with the president on an annuity that they were kind of posing him on, and that's why he took the LSU job, but it was too late. And, of course, the rest is history. Won a national title there. You know, NFL, I think, was always his destiny, but, you know, I think he realized there, you know what? If I go to a big-time college program, I can pick my own players. I don't have to worry about some draft, some parity, get stuck with a bad quarterback. So, obviously, to me, what he's done at Alabama, I think he's the best coach ever. Yeah, I did cover him, and that was a very, very formative learning experience for a young reporter who, you ask any kind of football question of Nick Saban, even a basic, like what was the play call on 3rd and 7, he would go out of his way to humiliate you. So it was a good learning experience.
Well, now, I mean, that is something that obviously I don't approve of. But I have asked this, and I even wonder if maybe, you know, the clock is ticking, the sword of Damocles going over Nick Saban. I know you just said they'll smash Auburn in the Iron Bowl, but I do wonder, how is somebody who has that kind of a public persona in press conferences, and for that matter, I mean, is being less than loyal to his quarterback that started almost 2 full years for him coming into this season. I mean, you know, Hurts isn't announced as a starter. He's pulled from the title game, for crying out loud. How does that someone get to recruit so well at a school, you know, Alabama? I understand who Alabama is, but again, there's Florida in that conference. There's Auburn. There's Old Tennessee, you know. I mean, Georgia. You know, it's not. There are a lot of good programs out there. How does Nick Saban? How does he do it?
Well, I mean, he's got everything rolling. I don't know, man. I mean, you know, here and there over the years, I remember that, like, it lost to Ole Miss a few years ago.
Sure.
You know, some people writing, you know, the dynasty may be coming to an end, and of course, no. They end up coming back to win it all that year. You know, I just think they've got everything rolling. They are setting the standard. They're setting the standard in terms of investment program, including him, including facilities, including, you know, they've got probably like 40 analysts running around that place. I mean, it's actually ridiculous. But the recruiting cachet, I mean, I don't see an end to it until Saban decides to leave. And you're right. I mean, Georgia's recruiting extremely well. I think we've got some great battles ahead with those two. And other programs are capable of knocking off Alabama here and there, as Auburn did last year. But it's hard to see a serious you know, bump in the road for that program until Nick Saban hangs it up. And I think Nick Saban is one of those lifer guys, kind of like a Paul Bear Bryant, maybe kind of like a Joe Paterno. I think it's almost like, you know, when he gets out of coaching, then you're watching like, well, what does he do with the rest of his life? You know, I think this is his life. So I think he's going to go into his 70s doing this, especially if if nothing changes and they're still this formidable. You know, it's a pretty. I mean, to me, it's you go through all the history of college football. I mean, I think before it's over here, this is easily going to be the greatest dynasty in college football history.
Interesting. I mean, I remember just what a powerhouse Miami used to be. And I mean, to me, Miami is one of those yesterday's programs, even though they won their division this past year. It was the first time they won their division in the ACC. I just think that, you know, Florida and Florida State are now more prestigious, whereas Miami may have been the more prestigious one in the 80s. I remember how you knew Miami was going to win. That was just, you know, and just how great they were. And saying that Alabama now is better than what Miami was. But the thing is, yeah, I do get it. I want everybody to get Joe Rexrode. I mean, if you're not reading his stuff in the Tennessean, you are falling behind. And it doesn't even matter if you're a Nashville sports fan or not. I don't care if you root for the Titans or not. This guy has it on. And again, it was a great idea. You know, Vandy and the Vols, or the Iron Bowl? Well, I'll tell you what, Saban, I know Saban. He ain't losing to the Tigers 2 straight years. Yeah, there'll be plenty of parking in Nashville. Yeah, it's Nashville. Where would you rather go after the game? Come on, you know, I mean, you know, Tuscaloosa, you know, where is that? Where are the plains? What's there to do? Is it a dry county? Tri-City Sports Now. There you go. Anyway. How'd you like that ending? Was that anything?
Pretty good.
All right. Thank you on the short notice. I mean, I know we talked and all that, and I let it.